have President Donald Trump and the powerful few falsely accuse you of being the cause of senseless violence and criminal acts of lawlessness in your communities. But enough is enough, and we're going to fight for justice for all. And I want to say that I believe that prosecutors should not wait till a national tragedy to hold police accountable. Every day around this country, we have some police officers that inflict harm in communities that need police the most by disrespecting individuals that they're supposed to protect and serve. And we, as prosecutors, have to hold them accountable by making sure they're trustworthy and they do not police or do their job with racial bias. So I want us all to say, time out for 45, time out for Donald Trump, and please vote November 3rd. And guess what we all need to say? You're fired. Thank you, I appreciate you.
Thank you, Attorney. Next, we will have the presiding bishop of the Mid-Atlantic Episcopal Church of the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Congregation in Washington, D.C. He serves as the presiding bishop of the Mid-Atlantic Episcopal District, including Allegheny, Barbados, East Tennessee, Virginia, Guyana, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Ohio, St. Vincent, and the Virginia Conferences. He is a founder and the past president of the Greater Centennial Community Development Corporation and lives his life by the theme, "It's our outreach that validates our upreach." Please welcome Bishop W. Darren Moore.
We celebrate the courageous and prophetic leadership of the Reverend Al Sharpton and Martin Luther King III for calling us together today. And I stand here this morning as a bishop in the great AME Zion Church, known as the Freedom Church, the Church of Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Coretta Scott King before she married a Baptist preacher. Even after the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, after Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, Sandra Bland, Alton Sterling, Freddie Gray, Michael Brown, and dozens of other names who have become hashtags, the unmitigated gall, the utter temerity of a police officer emboldened enough to not only grab Jacob Blake in the back, but to shoot him, not one, not two, but 7 times. We come together because we are one. An African proverb says that when a thorn pierces the foot, the whole body bends over to pull it out. So we've come together to pull out the thorn that has embedded our people. We're gathered to say that we demand change, systemic change, and we demand it now. No empty gestures, but we want transformation in this country. Our protests are acts of lament, cries of pain, venting of rage, but they're also strategies of resistance and renewal. So yes, we will protest, but we will also advocate for policies that protect our children. Congress must adopt the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill now, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Bill now. We will march, but we will also mobilize and vote in record numbers. Some whites in this country became so sick of seeing a black family in the White House that they became nauseous and vomited out Donald Trump. Well, we've come to declare that it's cleanup time in the White House. It's cleanup time in America. COVID-19 will take time to eradicate, but Trumpism is a virus and voting is the vaccine. So we will vote. And on November 3rd, we will begin to restore peace and justice, and we will demand that America lives up to its values. No justice, no peace.
Amen. Got a little word in here this morning, amen. Our next speaker is a fourth-generation member of the Church of God in Christ and follows in the steps of several generations of men and women in his family serving in the ministry. He's passionate about preaching the gospel and proclaims God's word with power and conviction during his worship services, teaching sessions, and through the television, radio, and internet. He's all over Twitter. These millennials and Gen Zers got nothing on him. He's a consummate community activist and is respected for his work in the area of human rights across the region. He has served on many community boards and has received numerous awards for his work. Please welcome Bishop Talbert W. Swan II.
Good afternoon. What does it mean to be black in America? As a black person in America, I can get killed on the street for no reason, shot in the park for playing with a toy, choked to death just because, murdered for being black in a white neighborhood, shot in my car while rushing home to get medicine to my daughter, killed in the stairwell for trying to catch an elevator, gunned down in Walmart for holding a toy, all for no price, for no ransom, for no reward, just because I've been labeled as less than human. I'm black, I'm other, I'm not like them. My music is too loud, my hair is too kinky, too nappy, too dreaded, my pants are too saggy, my shoes aren't tied, I'm wearing a hoodie, I walk too fast, I look intimidating, I'm a threat, a menace, a societal scourge, a casualty, a neighborhood nuisance. I can't win. I can't get a job. I can't get a raise. I can't find respect. I can't make ends meet. I can't breathe. What do I do when I can't breathe? We reject the process of dehumanization. We see everybody as our neighbors. We go back to God, who is the source of our breath. We passed the John Lewis voting rights bill. We passed the George Floyd justice in policing bill, and we throw bigotry and fascism and a Mango Mussolini out of the White House by going to the polls on November 3rd and voting in record numbers until we get our breath back.
Let's hear it for Bishop Swan. Joining us now from Birmingham, Alabama, is the co-founder and partner at Think Rubik's and the creator of Woke Vote. Please welcome DeWanna Thompson.
Carter G. Woodson once said, to handicap a student by teaching him that his black face is a curse and that his struggle to change his condition is hopeless. This is the worst sort of lynching. It's hard to believe in 2020, black bodies are still being lynched by those who long for a time when policies like slavery, Jim Crow, the war on drugs, don't ask, don't tell, sterilization, and other systems have kept people of color marginalized. Policies that would have us believe that our situation is hopeless to change. Well, my name is Dewana Thompson, and I have traveled from Birmingham, Alabama to declare that in spite of what we have endured and are enduring, we have a lively hope. Let me be clear. Our hope was never built on the promise of this nation. Our hope was never built on capitalism or the glorification of wealth. Our hope was not built on white picket fences and manicured lawns. Our hope wasn't built on a police state that never saw blacks as equal. America has never been and never will be our source of hope. So hear me when I say our hope was built on hymns. Our hope was built on collard greens. Our hope was built on ingenuity, creativity, and determination. Our hope was built on ancestral divinity. Our hope was built and bought by Fannie Lou, Marcus Garvey, Harry Belafonte, Tuskegee Airmen, the Little Rock Nine, Nat Turner, Four Little Girls in Birmingham, Malcolm Martin and Mahalia, Emmett Till, Tamir Rice, Nita Pop, and George Floyd. We have a lively hope. Our hope is being built and rebuilt on streets all over this country where black and brown voices are demanding justice. We won't be turned around. We are not afraid. And I can't tell you what I've heard. I can only tell you what I know. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus Christ, his righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. So yes, I do bring you greetings from a reimagined South, from Alabama, where our beloved Congressman John Lewis bled on Emmett Pettus Bridge for the right to vote, passed his bill, to Louisville, Kentucky, where my friends with Until Freedom met brute force just this Tuesday on the Cardinal Bridge. The ask was simple then, the ask is simple now. Give us our justice. Arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor. Expand the right to vote and protect that vote in November. I am grateful to Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network. I thank you, Martin Luther King III, for bringing us here today to remind us that there is hope that cannot lynch our spirits, that cannot lynch our joy, that cannot lynch our brilliance, and that cannot kill this moment. Hope is our revolution, and justice is our righteous inheritance. God bless you.
All right, so if some of the speakers will leave something for everybody else, don't just tear up the whole podium. Arm's length, social distancing. Y'all, put your arms out like that. We're going to be reminding you of this during the course of the day. Keep your arms spread out. This is a socially distant march on Washington. Amen? Our next speaker is a Columbia University graduate, public speaker, and award-winning social entrepreneur. Chelsea Miller is the co-founder of Freedom March NYC, a youth protest and policy group on the front lines pushing for reform here in New York, as well as a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. AKA's in the house. Coming with Chelsea is Naila Idari. She's the co-founder also of Freedom March NYC. Most recently, she worked in the office of the highest ranking African American in Congress, Majority Whip of the House, Jim Clyburn, and in the office of New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer. She too is a AKA. Please welcome Chelsea Miller and Naila Idari, please.
Thank Thank you so much to Rev. Al Sharpton and National Action Network for having us here today. When I think about the start of my own activism, it started at 15 as the Midwest Youth Director of National Action Network. These movements have always been intergenerational. John Lewis was 23 years old when he marched from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama. These movements have also always included Black women, but we haven't always gotten our recognition. When we think about Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks and Mahalia Jackson, Black women have continued to be on the front line, so these movements must continue to be intersectional.
And like Naila said, as we stand here as the co-founders of Freedom March NYC, as we stand here today celebrating the history of what we mean when we talk about the civil rights movement, because we know that progress is not easy, and it does not happen in one generation, but it takes all of us coming together. We could not be here without the protests and mobilization efforts of so many organizers, Black women organizers who have led in New York City. When they were saying that the KKK was coming to New York City, when they were pepper spraying and macing organizers on the ground and kidnapping us in unmarked police vans, we still came out and we still made sure that this movement was not silenced. And so we may be young, but we are a force. We may be young, but we stand on the shoulders of giants. We may be young, but we are organized and we are strategized, and we will show up in November to the polls, and we will let them know that we are not going anywhere. We will ensure that this revolution will be televised. We will ensure that this movement will continue in an intersectional way, in an intergenerational way, and we will not allow for this democracy that has promised us equality and justice to not make sure that they keep that promise. And if it doesn't happen today, we will make sure that in November we push for that promise, because we know that this country and this very stage that we are standing on, the Lincoln Memorial, was built off of the backs of our ancestors. And so with that being said, Freedom March NYC is a youth-led civil rights organization for our generation. Make sure you are following us on Instagram at Freedom March NYC. Make sure you are supporting Black women on the front lines, Black trans on the front lines. Pull up. This is Freedom Summer, Freedom Fall, and the next step is ensuring that we create change and we do it sustainably. Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is a public policy and government relations professional holding a BA in politics and an MA in international relations with a concentration in international law from NYU. From her previous role as a legislative fellow in the House of Representatives, the U.S. House, to her current positions as policy advisor with the National Action Network, managing director for the Kenneth Cyril Valley Foundation, the youngest commissioner on the D.C. Mayor's Advisory Board for Caribbean Community Affairs, and a co-founder of Concerned Citizens D.C. Her commitment to identifying sustainable solutions to disparities in development across the Black diaspora remains at the forefront of all she does. This must be AKA moment, AKA hour. She's an award-winning member of the AKAs and has been named 5 under 25 and recognized as a 30 under 30 Caribbean American leader. Please welcome the National Action Network's own Kyra Stevenson Valley.
Thank you, Mark, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to Martin III and my boss and mentor, Reverend Al Sharpton, for convening this march. Thank you to my superhuman NAN family for organizing this march. And thank you to all of you for joining us in the middle of a pandemic to demand that America get its knee off our necks. My name is Kyra Stevenson Valley, and I serve as a policy advisor in NAN's DC Bureau. 57 years ago today, people traveled across the nation to stand right here, united in their commitment to justice. Their commitment won us the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Their commitment won us the 1965 Voting Rights Act. It was a long fight, but they were committed. It was a long fight, but commitment won. This summer, millions have taken to the streets in all 50 states to demand justice in policing. Today, on the anniversary of the march that helped usher in a new era of voting, we demand that the Voting Rights Act be restored to all it was meant to be. It is a long fight, but we are committed. Today, everyone received a ticket to enter. Take your phones out right now and scan your ticket to check your voter registration status. November is coming and we have work to do. We are committed to passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the George Floyd Justice in Policing Bill. It is a long fight, but we are committed. It is a long fight, but we will win. Thank you.
Two other speakers I'd like to introduce. First of all, let's give Kyra a round of applause. One of our up-and-coming. Justice Shorter is a disability justice advocate and Black, disabled, Lives Matter amplifier, a national expert on disability, inclusive disaster protections, emergency management, and humanitarian crises conflicts. With a steadfast commitment to international development and inclusive humanitarian assistance, Justice continues to participate in ongoing projects as a global advisor and trainer. After Justice Shorter speaks, we will hear from Carrie Gray, the founder and CEO of the Carrie Gray Group and a founder of the National Alliance of Multicultural Disabled Advocates. Carrie's work centers on exploring the impact of race, gender, and disability as Black young professionals mature and transition into their careers. So please welcome Justice Shorter and Carrie Gray. Hear ye them.
Good morning. It is a privilege to stand before you in recognition of a long-standing movement that uplifts countless people and narratives such as Corrine Gaines, Sandra Bland, Natasha McKenna, and Tony McDade. However, did you also know that each of these individuals were Black people with disabilities? Ableism is the discrimination against people with physical and mental health conditions. There is a proven and fatal relationship between racism, ableism, and state violence. We must make no mistake that ableism is antithetical or mutually incompatible to Black liberation. I want to know that there is a place for my elder who now uses a wheelchair with hands full of arthritis, but who has fought alongside us all her life and given all her energy just for us to reach this moment. Let us be clear that that ableism is antithetical to Black liberation. I want to know that my young melanin sisters who are full of dreams, full of aspirations, and I have to know that there's a Black Lives Matter movement space that will not call her mental health conditions too crazy for liberation, that will not say her dyslexia makes her too ignorant to learn the fullness of freedom. Again, it is imperative that we claim ableism as antithetical to Black liberation. And as I turn 30 years old today, on a day that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. told us his dreams, I too dream. I dream of the ability to earn respect and opportunity. So I'm here to unapologetically say that Black lives matter, including your Black disabled life. Thank you. And let us remember to support the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And with that, I'm going to turn it to my comrade, Justice.
We are here today to hold space and honor Black people with disabilities. 30 to 50% of those killed by the police have some sort of disability, mental health consideration, or access and functional need. See, being disabled while Black must never serve as justification for discrimination or the use of deadly force. Black disabled lives matter. We show up here today for all of us who were told so many of us have been overlooked and otherized, excluded and erased, ignored and isolated, silenced and shamed, casually consulted for input, yet rarely considered for leadership. So many of us have been dissuaded from our dreams, yet we continue to teach the world what access to liberation, love, and each other truly mean. Black disabled lives matter. And if you believe and can commit to these words, then when I say Black disabled lives, you say matter. Black disabled lives matter. Black disabled lives matter. Black disabled lives matter. Yes, we do. Thank you, and thank you to the Reverend Al Sharpton, Martin Luther King III, and the National Action Network. Thank you.
Thank you, amen. No, please give him a round of applause, if you would. It's my honor now to introduce our co-host for today, national news correspondent for Reach Media, a subsidiary of Radio 1. She's a native Washingtonian, an award-winning journalist whose career in radio and TV combined spans 20 years. She is currently the national news correspondent for Reach Media, serving as a contributor to the Al Sharpton Show on WOL 1450 AM and Sirius XM 126 from 1 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Because of her dedication to the community and lifetime activism outside of her career, in 2016, she received the President Barack Obama Lifetime Achievement Award. Please welcome our co-host today, Ebony McMorris.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. Before I begin and introduce the next speaker, I want to quote some of the words from the late John Lewis that he said in 1963. He said, "My friends, let us not forget that we are involved in a serious social revolution. By and large, American politics are dominated by politicians who build their careers on immoral compromises and ally themselves with open forms of political, economic, and social exploitation." And I'm going to ask the same question that he asked then, which is, where is the political party that will make it unnecessary for us to keep having to march on Washington? Our next speaker is Alea Eastman. She is a 2019 graduate from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. On February 14th, 2018, she was in the third classroom attacked by a gunman who would go on to murder 17 students and staff. Since then, Alea has stepped up to speak out on gun violence in America and remains vocal around chronic gun violence that affects young African Americans daily, to include testifying before Senate and House Judiciary Committees. She is a nonprofit organizer, as well as a co-organizer and co-founder of Concerned Citizens DC, a group that not only has consistently organized protests in DC, but also developed a list of federal and local demands that would save Black lives. Please welcome Alea Eastman.
I am one of the millions of young Black women who make up the backbone of the American progressive movement. Like too many of us, my journey of activism started by a senseless act of gun violence when a fellow student opened fire in my classroom in Parkland, Florida. As I laid beneath the lifeless body of my classmate, Nicholas Dworet, to survive, as bullets riddled my classmates, as my screams melted into the cries of the wounded, I was then born again with a voice that cannot and will not be muzzled. While the details of my story may be different from other impacted youth, my brush of death by a gun is an experience that is shared by too many of our generation. I am not the first in my family to be affected by gun violence. My Uncle Patrick was gunned down in the streets of Brooklyn, New York at the age of 18, just months after being beaten by NYPD, who deemed his Black body in a white neighborhood a threat. Gun violence is pervasive and extends well beyond high-profile mass shootings. This violence is not inherent or a coincidence. It is a result of poor choices made by policymakers that all too often have racial undertones associated with it. The flow of guns into already struggling communities is often facilitated by white gun store owners who look the other way as traffickers buy guns used to terrorize Black communities. Gun violence extends beyond the path of a bullet and creates multi-generational cycles of poverty, as well as social and and economic injustices. Law enforcement has for years failed to prevent the flow of guns into Black communities, as well as perpetuated violence in these communities themselves. Studies show that persistent gun violence in poor communities of color directly results from centuries of entrenched disadvantages, economic deprivation, and racist policymaking. In many ways, gun violence is the last domino to fall at the end of a long line of racism, trauma, and indifference. But this is not inevitable. Community-based intervention programs throughout the country have proven that holistic, culturally sensitive, embedded teams can stop violence before it starts. We demand funding for these programs. We've seen the shooting from my high school gain worldwide attention. But the mass shooting that happened in Southeast DC 3 weeks ago, where 17-year-old Christopher Brown lost his life and 20 people were wounded, got no attention. Be outraged equally for Black lives. It is important that as I talk about gun violence, I address police violence. We must shift from a punitive to a rehabilitative model in the prison system. There is a need for a national conversation of defunding police departments and refunding our communities instead. We must reallocate those funds into schools, jobs, and needs for a comfortable life. We need to revisit the use force practices and eliminate conduct that places suspects at extreme harm once in custody. As has been established, officers nationwide lack accountability. For an officer who knows that he can kill an unarmed Black man or woman and only get paid desk duty as an assault, anything less than that is business as usual. We must change this reality and empower citizens of the communities being policed to hold their local forces accountable. It is important that we recognize that the systematic oppression that continues to marginalize our communities is not an accident. America was built on a system that is still doing its job. Police violence is gun violence, and gun violence is a leading cause of death for Black youth. We demand to live in peace. We demand to live in spaces where the best of Black culture can thrive, where Black men are more likely to have a mortgage and a picket fence than a record, where Black women are business executives and vice presidents, where our trans sisters and brothers don't fear being themselves. But this dream that Rev. Al Sharpton, that Martin Luther King III have for Black Americans cannot be realized until we have a federal government with our best interests at heart. For our part, Brady and Team Enough are engaged in a campaign to remove barriers to casting a ballot, making vote by mail available to all, ensuring ballot drop boxes are distributed equitably, restoring the voting rights of Americans who have paid their debt to society. We have so much good trouble to get into. I want to thank the community organizers of National Action Network, and especially their organizer-in-chief, the Reverend Al Sharpton and Martin Luther King III, for the work that they do, not just today, but every day, and giving us a place at the table. As I returned from Louisville yesterday, where Breonna Taylor was brutally killed by LMPD, it is still clear that Black women are still unprotected. As I stand here in pain from the aftermath of tear gas and rubber bullets, I realize that Black women are still the backbone of this movement. My name is Alea Eastman, a student at Trinity Washington University, executive council member of Brady's Team Enough, co-founder and core organizer of Concerned Citizens DC, a grassroots group of young Black organizers demanding true liberation for Black people. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marcus W. King. He's the president of New Jersey's Teamsters Local 331. A second-generation Teamster, King has been a member since 1983. After he was asked to join the International Brotherhood of Teamsters as a field representative, one of his assignments included Local 331. The members of the local asked King to stay on, and King was successful in being elected president in 2009, re-elected in 2012, 2015, and 2018. King has served on the UPS Supplement Negotiation Committee for Philadelphia Metro Area and the National Master Freight Supplement Panel. Please welcome Marcus W. King.
Good morning. Thank you, Reverend Al Sharpton, Martin Luther King Jr. III, and the National Action Network for assembling us here today. This is an awesome event. Brothers and sisters, good morning. It's an honor to be with you. As the young lady just said, my name is Marcus King. I'm the director for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Human Rights and Diversity Commission. And I bring you greetings on behalf of our General President, James P. Hoffa. The Teamsters Union have a long history of standing not only for members, but for those Americans who have been discriminated over and overlooked. For 57 years after the first March on Washington, the Teamsters have again stand with you proud to reaffirm our support for racial and economic equality in this country. The Teamsters brothers and sisters, black, white, men, women, all stood with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to fight for justice. And now we must finish the fight. We must finish this fight. We must complete the mission for genuine equality. There are forces out there working against us to dismantle the union and labor laws. They have circumvented civil rights laws in our courts. They have manipulated our election to try to block our vote. They have denied us job promotion because of the color of our skin. They have stolen wages from us by perpetuating minimum wage standards that no one can survive on. Yes, they even are going after labor unions. They have tried to systematically strip away the voice to protect workers as we fight for fair wages, equal pay, good health care, and a decent pension for retirement. And now they're trying to separate American labor by putting a gap between the have and the have-nots. As it gets wider and wider, just look at Jeff Bezos, what he made this year. Brothers and sisters, it's time for action. Words are not enough. We will not be ignored any longer. We can change it now. So there's three things that I'm going to ask you to do. One, lobby members of Congress to pass H.R. 71, the Justice and Policing Act, George Floyd Act. Two, lobby H.R. 4, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act. But most important, number three, we must vote. This coming November, we must vote. We have to tell this country, take the knee off our necks. Use your voice for those who can no longer be with us. Make your voice count. Jacob Blaine, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. Do it for my brother Teamster, Philando Castile, who was killed by Minnesota police. Or do it for you. Make your voice count. Make it a better place for us and our children. Black lives do matter because our lives matter. Stay safe. God bless you. All of my brothers and sisters in the movement, Teamster Strong. My name is Marcus King, and I'm the Director for Human Rights and Diversity for the Teamsters International Union. Thank you.
next we have Alan Roscoff, proudly co-authored the nation's first gay rights bill in 1970 and served as its chief lobbyist. In 2004, he formed the Jim Owls Liberal Democratic Club, which is a citywide LGBTQ organization serving all of New York City. New York Magazine dubbed him as Al Sharpton's ambassador to the gay community in the 80s, and he currently serves as secretary of the Civil Rights Museum, built in Harlem, New York, under the leadership of Reverend Al Sharpton. Let's give him a round of applause.
I'm here to tell everybody that the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community is part of this struggle. We join with Black Lives Matter. We march with you. We get arrested, we risk arrest, and we get brutalized in support. After all, the gay rights movement was formed because of brutality of the police in a bar known as Stonewall. Until the black community is recognized as an equal community, until the police harassment, the police belittlement, the police shootings, and the police killings, we will stand united. We are all one. We want you to know that we will continue demonstrating. We will continue marching. We will continue to protest. We will continue to upset the power structure. We will continue to risk arrest. We will continue to be arrested. We will be part of this movement, and in all the demonstrations and protests in New York and across the country, you can see our rainbow flags and our rainbow banners. Black Lives Matter is one of the most important organizations and movement, one of the most important movements in this country and in history. I thank you all. I thank Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network for putting this together and being such a good friend to the LGBT community. Together to victory, and vote out the racist in the White House and vote out his entire administration and his supporters. Thank you.
Up next, we have Frank Nitty Sensbar. Joy, that's right. Frank brought his crowd. Joined by fellow activist Sandy Solo. He is a Black Lives Matter protester, activist, and lead organizer for the 2020 Walk from Milwaukee to Washington, D.C. Okay? To stand in solidarity with the National March on Washington, please welcome Frank Nitty Sensbar.
Hello, I'm Sandy Solo from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm here with activists Frank Nitty and Tori Lowe. We took a 750-mile trek across the country to get here. I'll let Frank speak on the journeys, some of the things we faced during this journey. But I'd like to thank all our Facebook friends who cash-apped us. I'd like to thank our photographers. I'd like to thank our videographers. I'd like to thank all the marchers who marched with us and all the caravan and the medic crews who came along with us. I love you and God bless you.
How y'all doing out there? My name is Frank Nitty, all right? They only gave me 2 minutes, so I'm not gonna talk about my journey. I'm gonna talk about what I came here to talk about, all right? Now check it out. As activists around the country, we need to get organized. Every 3 months when a black person get killed, that shouldn't be the only time we find out about black people getting killed by the police. We need to get organized together as a nation of activists so we can call on each other whenever we need help. We need to demand change, not ask for change. They think this is a negotiation. This is not a negotiation. I came here to demand change. I'm tired. Are y'all tired? Because I'm tired. My grandsons ain't gonna be marching for the same stuff my granddaddy marched for. This is a revolution, all right? We just marched 750 miles from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 24 days to get here because we not gonna stop until we get change. That's what we need in this country. All of y'all that came today, I know y'all been marching in y'all cities. I know y'all been marching. Don't stop marching. We gonna organize because they don't expect that. We gonna come together because they don't expect that. We gonna demand change because they don't expect that. We not gonna have our kids marching. This is it. We've been marching for the same stuff for 60 years. Black people shouldn't be marching for the same stuff Martin Luther King was marching for. I'm tired. I'm tired. And I'm tired of asking for justice. I just want it to stop. We don't want justice. That's after a racist police do something to us. We need them out of the police. We need all these racist people gone. We need change, and we can get that by voting. Now, while we marched this 750 miles, everybody that came and chastised us, everybody that came with shotguns, everybody that came messing with us had Trump signs. Trump 2020. That's the new way that they exhibit racism in this country and hide behind it. So we got to vote Trump out of office, all right? So when it's time to vote, we going to vote. And if y'all see me up here, if you an activist, stop me out there so we can organize. It's time. This is the revolution. This is the revolution.
Our next speaker is David Clooney. He's the Executive Director of the Black Economic Alliance, the nation's only coalition of business leaders and aligned advocates committed to economic progress and prosperity in the Black community, with a specific focus on work, wages, and wealth. Before joining BEA, David led the state and local government relations team at J.B. Morgan Chase & Company. He's a graduate of Howard University School of Law, where he was editor-in-chief of the Law Review, and the University of Albany State University of New York, and sits on the board of the National Urban League. Please welcome David G. Clooney.
I'm David Clooney. I lead the Black Economic Alliance, a group of Black business leaders and allies dedicated to improving work, wages, and wealth for Black people. We know the 1963 March on Washington was a march for jobs and freedom. In over 50 years, the wealth gap between Black and white Americans has not changed significantly. In fact, by some measures, it's even wider today. But we're at an inflection point. It may have taken 400 years plus 8 minutes and 46 seconds to get here, but there is an increasing recognition that systemic racism continues to oppress Black people in every part of American life. So what do we do with this moment? Of course we need to continue to fight for social justice, but we also need to fight for economic justice from our elected leaders and in the business community. We need to fight for better work, wages, and wealth for Black people. That's skills training for the future of work, closing the Black-white pay gap, and building generational wealth for Black families. Right now, we absolutely have to vote. Congress should pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to ensure free and fair elections, and just like we're showing up to march across America, we have to show up and vote. Over 40 states will allow early voting this year, so vote early if you can. Make a plan and make sure your vote is counted well before Election Day. We owe it to the civil rights giants who marched, bled, and died for us. We owe it to the families of countless Black people lost to unchecked institutional racism. We owe it to America to help her keep her promise to all of us. I am so inspired by the demand for justice that's emanating from every corner of America right now. We have to continue this march on every platform we have, in the streets, in the halls of Congress, in the corporate boardrooms, and with our vote, so we can finally achieve social and economic justice. Thank you.
Coming to the stage is Portia Taylor. She's a brand builder, music lover, sport bike rider. Portia Taylor is the founder of Black Girls Ride, a magazine and community originally launched as a place for women of color who ride, which has since grown to include all women. What inspired her to launch Black Girls Ride was the lack of representation that she saw when she started riding, especially long distance. When not developing brand campaigns, spinning at the hottest parties, or on her way up to, quote, occupy the gym, Portia can be found rolling in her pink habaya. I know I said that wrong. I don't even ride. And always living her best life. Please welcome Portia Taylor.
Good afternoon. I'm Portia Taylor, and I'm here as a representative of Black Girls Ride. More than a magazine, we are a movement of women passionate about motorsports. Over 100 women rode across America to be with you here today. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams. Women of color on ground, traveling across the land of the free. We are your mothers, your grandmothers, your aunts, your sisters, and your daughters. Our ride started Monday in Long Beach, California. As we rode through Texas, I thought about my soror, Sandra Bland, and how a simple traffic stop ended in her death. We all witnessed George Floyd's death as he cried for help, the heartbreaking death of Breonna Taylor as she slept in her home. And less than a week ago, Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back and paralyzed. With each act of senseless violence, we feel a stirring in our collective soul. When a call to march was issued, we knew it was time to mount up. We packed up our bikes and rode thousands of miles in protest against police brutality. We ride unapologetically for Black lives, and we raise our throttle hand in support of those on the front line of our struggle. We ride to ensure the freedom of our future leaders. We've come a long way, but our journey is not over. In November, Black Girls Ride will rev our engines. We will lead the ride to the polls and fuel the ballot boxes of this nation to choose a leader that will provide the unity our country desperately needs. We invite you to join in this and vote like your life depends on it. Thank you.
Our next speaker really needs no introduction and stays on the front line. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She's an activist, a legislator, a survivor, and the first woman of color to be elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Throughout her career as a public servant, Congresswoman Pressley has fought to ensure that those closest to the pain are closest to the power, driving and informing policymaking. Prior to her being elected to Congress, she served on the Boston City Council for 8 years and was the first woman of color elected to the council in its 100-year history. Please welcome Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
Good morning, beloved. Today, I am thinking of the ancestors, not just the ones recorded in our history books, but the ones omitted from those pages. The justice seekers, the freedom riders, the organizers, the community builders, every loved one that packed a brown bag lunch, led a freedom song, risked their life and livelihood, that Vaselined an elbow and sent up a prayer. Their sacrifice and self-determination shaped history and brought us to this moment. The truth of the matter is, we are because of them. We are Black with a capital B. We are the manifestation of the movement. We are a symbol of social, political, and cultural progress. If my granddaddy, the Reverend E. James Eccles, were here, he would whisper in my ear and say, "Grandbaby, make it plain." And I intend to do just that, make it plain. We are in unprecedented, uncertain times. We are challenged by the state of the nation and the crisis we face, but the state of our movements, it is strong. And another world is possible. Yes, it is possible to legislate justice and accountability. People over profits, joy over trauma, freedom over fear. Yes, it is possible to write budgets that actually value Black lives. If it feels unfamiliar, that's because it has never been done in America. We will meet the moment. We will work towards healing, justice, and collective liberation like our lives depend on it, because they do. We will march on, clear in our conviction, rooted in our faith, grounded in our history, intentional as we build. Let me make it plain. Black lives matter.
Our next speaker is Representative Adriano Espiat. Espiat proudly represents New York's 13th Congressional District, first elected to Congress in 2016. Espiat is serving his second term in Congress, where he serves as a member of the influential U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee, the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, and the House Small Businesses Committee. Throughout his 10-year career in public service, the congressman has been a vocal advocate for protecting tenants, improving schools, and making serious, smart investments in economic development, job creation, environmental protection. Prior to coming to Congress, he served as a New York State Senator, during which he represented the neighborhoods of Marble Hill, Inwood, Washington Heights, Hamilton Heights, West Harlem, Upper West Side, Hell's Kitchen, Clinton, and Chelsea. Please welcome U.S. Representative Adriano Espiat.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Reverend Al Sharpton. Thank you, National Action Network. Thank you all for being here on this great morning. I bring you greetings from Harlem, the capital of the African diaspora in the world. From East Harlem, the launching pad of the Latino experience in New York State. From immigrant Washington Heights, Hamilton Heights, Inwood, and working class Northwest Bronx. Over 50 years ago, the great Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis stood here and shared their dreams with all of you. Today, as the first formally undocumented member of Congress, I stand here with you today to say that yes, I am a man. That yes, we shall overcome. That yes, sí se puede. That yes, Black Lives Matter. And that yes, without no justice, there will be no peace. We come here today burying the scars and the wounds of 400 years of struggle, to say that whether your ancestors picked cotton or whether they cut sugarcane, we're all in the same boat right now. We must pass legislation to ensure that there is police reform. We must pass the pieces of legislation highlighted in the Harlem Manifesto against police brutality that are all included in the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Let's get rid of the chokehold. Let's get rid of the knee. We also must pass the John Lewis Voters' Rights Advancement Act to ensure that we all be able to vote. We must enact criminal justice reform. Let's do away with the death penalty. Let's do away with solitary confinement. Let's do away with mandatory minimums. I am a man. We shall overcome. Sí se puede. No justice, no peace, and Black Lives Matter. God bless you and keep the faith.
Up next is Representative Charles Booker, a 36-year-old state legislator born in Louisville, Kentucky. He successfully ran for State House in Kentucky in 2018, becoming the youngest African American in the House in more than 90 years, where he fought for common sense gun safety reform, prescription drug cost relief, voter protection and restoration in support of labor unions, for economic justice, against racial injustice, and more. Representative Booker recently founded Hood to the Holler, a 501c4 to capture the energy and infrastructure he built in his run to continue to build power, work on voter registration, and more, and to help positively transform our future. Please welcome Representative Charles Booker.
We stand here in the legacy of the dream that Dr. King lifted up, that Whitney Young pushed for, that Mattie Jones fought for, that my granddad Lindsey E. Hearn Sr. demanded. We're here today because we know that dream is not done. Because although they marched for us then, the cries we're hearing across the country right now, from Kenosha to Kentucky, from the hood where I'm from, to the hollers in Appalachia, to everywhere in between, those cries let us know we have more marching to do. And it is in this moment where we must rise up together. Because listen, we are built for this moment. We are on the shoulders of giants, but we must step off of those shoulders and lead ourselves. We are the dream, but we must turn that dream into demands. Demands for real justice, demands for humanity, demands for accountability, demands for an end to poverty, demands for an end to racism. And I am a living witness as the youngest black state legislator in Kentucky since the first one, and yes, I did stand up to run against Mitch McConnell. I am a personal witness that we are ready for this moment. We're built for the work we must do. And if we come together, all of us, if we stand united, if we march together, if we bend that arc together, there is nothing we can't do. There is no mountain we can't move. And there is no root of racism we cannot pull up. So we got to do it right now. We got to do it yesterday, so we definitely got to do it now. And I stand here as a young man in the legacy of a giant, Congressman John Lewis, who said 57 years ago some words that still ring true right now. We have to lift our voices together and say to America, wake up. Wake up, America. Because we can't stop. We cannot quit. and we cannot be patient. Let's win together. Let's fight together. Let's transform our future. Brianna, I'm representing you right now. Thank you all.
Next, we have Tyleek McMillan. He serves as the National Director of Youth and College Engagement and is a policy advisor for the National Action Network. A recent graduate of North Carolina A&T State University, Tyleek is a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, the Eta chapter, and hopes to one day serve as a legislator on the Hill. Please welcome Tyleek McMillan.
I give honor to the conveners, my boss and mentor, Reverend Al Sharpton, and Martin Luther King III. I also want to recognize the young leaders standing behind me from Nan Youth Huddle and Nan Collegiate. We find ourselves here in the spirit of John Lewis, making good trouble, necessary trouble, because the soul of our democracy is depending on it. We're not here to ask for justice. We're not here to negotiate justice, but we are here to demand justice. Far too many times we have been cut out. Far too many times we have been budgeted out, counted out, resourced out. It's time for legislators to invest in education. It's time for legislators to invest in mental health services. It's time to invest in communities. And I love my 1891. It's time to invest in historically black colleges and universities. Because we don't deserve just a half a dollar. We don't just deserve the quarter of the dollar, but we deserve the whole dollar. Dr. King spoke about the check that bounced in the Bank of Justice. And we've come to let the teller know at the bank that this check better not bounce. Because we will march and we will fight, because that's what we deserve. In the words of Dr. King in closing, and again, we come to cash the check, a check that is willing to demand the riches of freedom and security of justice. Thank you. No justice. No peace.
I hear you back there. No justice! No justice! That's just to echo you. Next up, we have Janet Muriga. As someone who has experienced the promise of the American dream firsthand, Janet has devoted her career in public service to opening the door to that dream to millions of American families. As a key figure in the Latino community, she continues this mission as president and CEO of Unidos US, a large national Hispanic civil rights and advocacy organization in the U.S. Welcome her to the stage.
Hello, hola. My name is Janet Murguia, and I'm president and CEO of Unidos US, the largest Latino civil civil rights and advocacy organization in the country. I want to tell you why I am here. I am here because we have stood and always will stand with Reverend Sharpton and Martin Luther King III and our far greater than what divides us. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote to Cesar Chavez in 1966, our separate struggles are really one, a struggle for freedom, for dignity, and humanity. I am here because we must support the young people of every background here as they rise up, make their voices heard, and tell those of their generation about the America that they want to see. Because we must reject bigotry and hate and insist that our country live up to its ideals and the values that we share. I am here because I am standing on the shoulders of giants like Congressman John Lewis to say, your fight is my fight. Tu lucha es mi lucha. I am here because Black lives matter. Sí se puede. Adelante. Muchísimas gracias.
Up next, we have Reverend Dr. Richardson, who serves on the board of several corporations and national organizations and is currently chairman of the board for the National Action Network. Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson is pastor of the historic Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, New York. He leads the largest African-American church in Westchester County, with a membership base of over 3,000 parishioners. Despite the interaction with U.S. presidents and heads of states, he has made sure to use the power of the pulpit to lift up local issues in the Mount Vernon area and nationwide. Dr. Richardson believes that grace must be at the vanguard of liberation and empowerment of African American people through our Christian faith. Please welcome Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson.
Good afternoon. Let's give ourselves a celebration. Look at how we've turned out in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of all that's going on. This is important to us. We lay ourselves on the line because this is important. On behalf of the members of the board of National Action Network, I want to thank all of the various organizations who have collaborated with us to bring this to pass. We celebrate the great leadership of our President, Reverend Al Sharpton, and Martin Luther King III, having convened us together. But our coming together for the speeches and the rhetoric of the moment will be meaningless if we do not leave here and activate and get involved and fight the fight and vote and encourage those who are not. We are at a crossroads in American history. We're at the intersection of perish or promise. If we fail to deliver in November, we will perish. If we fail to bring out our votes, we will not enjoy what we have struggled from. We're at a moment when all that we have fought for, all that our forefathers and mothers have died for, is at risk of being lost. Blood that's been shed for our freedoms is on the line, and we cannot perish. We must stand up. We must fight. We must engage every resource that we have. We still believe in America's promise. Not only are we on the precipice of perishing, but we're on the precipice of realizing the promise. And the promise is a nation where every person, black or white, yellow, red, male, female, LBGT, every dimension of our humanity is in the promise of a great America. And so I challenge us all to believe in a better day, to make the sacrifices, to make sure we go back to our cities and knock on doors and call our friends, because this will be a sham if we fail to bring out the vote on November the 3rd. This will be mockery if we do not deliver ourselves to the polls. This will be a disgrace if we fail to engage our resources to deliver on our own behalf, and our forefathers and mothers who lay in the cemeteries will want to turn over in their graves if we fail to deliver in this moment and grasp what they fought for. God bless you. Let's go. Let's get this done. We're able. We're powerful. Use the UR code that's on the screen that talks about the Black Church 75, vote 75. All of us must be engaged. God bless you, and I look to see you in the near future at the victory celebration. God bless you.
Next up, please welcome civil rights activist Maya Berry. She's the executive director of the Arab American Institute. Please welcome Maya Berry.
You guys look amazing. Reverend Al Sharpton, Martin Luther King III, thank you for your leadership. To the National Action Network, thank you for convening us today. To the families who've lost loved ones to racist violence, I am so sorry for the pain you have been forced to endure. I'm humbled to stand and march alongside you today and every day. My name is Maya Berry, and I'm the executive director of the Arab American Institute. On behalf of 3.7 million Arab Americans across the country, I stand here today with you in defense of Black lives. We do so because it is right, and regrettably, because it is necessary to declare that Black lives matter. We do so because we understand that until the killing of Black men, women, and children stops, until systematic racism and anti-Blackness is addressed, the America we all desire cannot be realized. For each life taken, each family destroyed, each neighborhood brutally patrolled, and for each protester taking to the streets to demand that all this stop, targeted by the same system of policing, justice will not be served by reforming tactics or trainings. Here's the simple truth. It's been 168 days since Breonna Taylor was killed in her own home. No charges have been filed. The system is not broken. It is working as it was designed, and we must change it. Today, we must recommit to defend Black lives, to end police brutality, and the racist system that upholds it. We must recommit to fight voter suppression and the impact of a politicized decennial census like we have never seen. Just as the 1963 march and the mass demonstrations in communities across the country shepherded the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, we must not stop until we have secured the passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the Khalid Jabara and Heather Heyer No Hate Act, and the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Just as matter is the minimum. These important legislative priorities must be where we start. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Jamal Bryant. He's a visionary, civil rights activist, community organizer. Dr. Jamal Harrison Bryant combines sound biblical teaching, business acumen, and political insight to propel the body of Christ to action and greater levels of faith. His ability to reach across social, economic, and political barriers has helped people not only experience the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ, but to activate success in their everyday lives. His ministry has become an incubator for entrepreneurs, homeowners, and like Dr. Bryant, is a senior pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia. Please welcome Dr. Jamal Bryant.
To our convener, organizer, and visionary, the man who God has anointed for this hour, Reverend Al Sharpton, we thank him for his courage and for his faith and for his distinction, as well as his commitment to civil rights down through the years. Brothers and sisters, not since 44 BC, when Marcus Aurelius Junius Brutus led 59 accomplices to stab Julius Caesar in the back, has there been such a heinous crime as the slaying of Jacob Blake. 7 times they shot him in the back. And today, while it is that you stand, Jacob finds himself paralyzed from the waist down. Not from these steps, but Dr. King said that we as a people should not find ourselves caught in the paralysis of analysis. In other words, our coming together is in vain if we just talk about the problems, but don't chart a course towards the solution. It's Harriet Tubman who said, "I freed thousands of slaves, but I would have freed hundreds more had they known they were slaves." I only thought about that when I saw the slaves on TV this week endorsing Donald Trump. I said, if only they knew they were slaves, they could have been rendered free. We cannot remain paralyzed. We can't be paralyzed wondering whether or not we're going to support the very first black female vice president in the United States. Don't tell me about what it is that she did in the past and you not talk about what she wants to do in America in the future. She wants to make sure that we get rid of privatized prisons, that there are no more mandatory minimums, and marijuana is no longer an illegal substance. We cannot be paralyzed knowing that she graduated just a few miles from here, from the original HU. And those of us who are products of HBCUs, you ought to be making some noise right now, knowing what it can develop and what it can deliver. We cannot be paralyzed. We cannot allow white evangelicals to paralyze us, saying that they cannot support our agenda because they're for pro-life. Don't tell me you're for pro-life and white evangelicals are silent when black people are dying in the street like dogs. We cannot be paralyzed. The black church, you cannot be paralyzed, saying that you're not going to support Black Lives Matter because of 3 fearless black sisters who happen to be lesbian. We've got to love our LGBTQ community, realizing that those are our sons and those are our daughters. We cannot be paralyzed. We cannot be paralyzed into believing Mr. Jones' water is colder. This is the time where we've got to support black businesses. because too many of them are closing down because of COVID-19. Not because they don't have adequate service, but because they don't have adequate support. But what America has to know about the tenacity of black people is that even when you render us paralyzed, we still know how to crawl. And on November 3rd, no matter what you do, we gonna crawl to the polls. If you take away the mailbox, we still gonna crawl. You take away the polling stations away from our community, we still gonna crawl. We gonna sing the original gangster rap music. Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go on to my Lord and be free. We still gonna crawl. There is something about us that understands that we stand today with our brother Jacob, realizing that even if we find ourselves paralyzed and you force us to crawl, we are like butterflies, because butterflies only have two options. They crawl and then they fly. And we understand in this hour, this is the hour for black people to fly. Maya Angelou said, you can write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. But still like dust, we rise, we rise, we rise. And if you don't know Maya Angelou, the least you can do is loan the Migos. And black people from here until November 3rd, we gotta walk it like we talk it. We gotta keep moving until our generation takes the baton, changes the country, and makes America great for the very first time. Black people, rise up and accomplish what you will.
Of mothers from Georgia, are you in the house? Georgia came? All right. Next up, please welcome Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. She is serving her 13th term as a member of the United States House of Representatives. She serves the 18th Congressional District of Texas, centered in Houston, the energy capital of the world, and sits on 3 congressional committees: the House Committee, the Judiciary and Homeland Security Committee, and the crucial Budget Committee. She's the author of the Emancipation National Historic Trail Study Act and the lead sponsor for H.R. 40, the commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. Please welcome Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Weeks of back-to-back party conventions, concluding this evening with the president accepting the Republican nomination. And he will do so from the South Lawn at the White House. Tonight's theme is America, Land of Greatness. With the crowd expected to exceed over 1,000, the Secret Service have installed additional fencing around the perimeter of the grounds. A fireworks display will follow his speech. And by the way, this historical note, it was 80 years ago in July of 1940 that President Franklin D. Roosevelt also delivered his acceptance speech in a radio address from the White House. He, of course, was seeking a 3rd term. In addition to the president's remarks in the 10 p.m. East Coast time hour, you will hear from the Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy, and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Many of those speeches will take place inside the Mellon Auditorium here in Washington, including Franklin Graham, HUD Secretary Ben Carson, and Ivanka Trump, who will be calling her father, quote, the people's president. Jackie Alamany covers politics for the Washington Post. She is also the anchor of Power Up, available every morning at WashingtonPost.com. She's joining us from New York. And outside the president, which of course is the headline tonight, what else are you looking for?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Stephen. Thanks so much for having me on this historic night. I think it goes without saying that this is the president's night. This is his biggest opportunity yet to make a direct pitch to the American people as to why they should support him in his re-election campaign over Joe Biden. So I think we're going to see a continuation of what we saw from the vice president last night, which is a contrast of what a Democratic administration would bring to the White House versus what Trump wants to continue to bring. Last night from Vice President Mike Pence, that meant talking about law and order, talking about Democrats potentially embracing socialist values and allowing for lawlessness and defunding the police. But as many fact checkers noted today, the Vice President, Joe Biden, actually, his police reform plan calls to improve and increase the amount of funding to police. But again, I think despite the facts here, we're going to see the president drive home this narrative that under a Democratic administration, there would be violence and looting. But again, as Biden, said today during his hits on MSNBC and CNN in a sort of a rebuttal to what we saw last night, those scenes that the president has been describing throughout the week and his allies are actually all happening under the current Trump administration.
And of course, that was the headline this morning at Power Up as the president and the GOP go all in on the law and order message as the protests continue in Kenosha, Wisconsin and elsewhere. Also bringing this pre-buttal earlier today from Senator Kamala Harris, the Democratic VP nominee.
Barack Obama and Joe Biden had a program called Predict that tracked emerging diseases in places like China. I'm going to repeat that. The program tracked emerging diseases in places like China. Before the virus hit, Trump made our country vulnerable. After it was struck, he failed to do what was necessary. As it continues, he's making it worse every day.
And of course, we heard from the vice president last night going after the Democrats on COVID-19 and their initial response to the president shutting down travel with China. So your thoughts on the comments today by Senator Harris?
Yeah, I think that what Senator Harris's comments